How's it going, guys? Cameron here with Canadian Gamer, coming at you with another video, a little bit of a rant video, if you will. So we have a couple of things to discuss here. The first thing I sort of want to give an update on, some of you may have seen my post talking about Jordy Slasher Gaming. He had shadow banned me on his YouTube channel, and I was led to believe it was because I had a differences of opinion on the limited run game story that has been developing over the last couple of weeks. Somebody reached out to me that has known Mark for several years. Apparently he's met Mark several times in person, knows him personally, and unbeknownst to me, apparently Mark has deep-rooted animosity towards Canadians and possibly Americans as well. I don't know how much truth there is to this. I tried to reach out to Mark, radio silence, he doesn't want to speak to me. You know, I kind of had an inkling that he had an issue with Canadians because oftentimes on his channel he would do community, videos where he'd put out an idea and he would say, I'd like so-and-so to take the torch or the baton and run with it and, put out their top 5 or their top 10. And he would always, pass the baton to his other countrymen. He wouldn't dare offer someone from Canada or the U.S. to chip in on whatever it was he was talking about. So I don't know what the deal is with Mark. I'd like to think in the year 2023, we are beyond this sort of rhetorical way of thinking, very prehistoric and primitive, if you will. If that is the case, Mark, if you've got a problem with what I said about limited run games, that's fine. If you want to shadow ban me because of that, that's fine. I don't care. But if you're shadow banning me just because of my nationality, look, I didn't pick and choose where I was born. Okay, that I had no control over that. So seriously, dude, if you want to reach out to me, I have an open door policy. You know where to find me. But I really hope that's not true, Mark, because, man, I'm hearing things that it's political and it's got to do with. I'm not going to get into it here, but yeah, in a way, I guess I'm happy because it's not necessarily targeted towards me personally as to why he shadow banned me, but to find out that it could be because I'm Canadian, it's fucking ridiculous. The next thing we'll talk about here is the CU podcast. A little bit of backstory here. I'm not subscribed to Pat the NES Punk. I don't think I ever have been. I've watched his content from time to time. And, with the Amico drama that's been unfolding over the last several years now, it's been, I've watched several of his videos, at least from a couple of years ago. There was a lot of back and forth between Pat and Ian and Tommy Tallarico in the Amico camp. But I didn't subscribe to him because I find a lot of times this content, it's poisonous, it's toxic. You spend 40 minutes watching Pat and Ian rant about the Amico, and then you watch someone's response video, and then you go back to their video. You could waste several hours in a day watching all these videos. So Master System Marceau reached out to me and said, check this video out. And it was the video of the CU podcast from, I believe, yesterday or maybe the day before. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe it was a couple of days ago at this point. And again, it was about the Amico. It was more about, I guess they were breaking down, members of the community that had responded to the Amico Christmas video that Pat had put out last week, and that's another video that Master System Marceau had asked me to check out. I told Master System Marceau, I said, dude, you got to stop it with the drama videos. I said, you're wasting your time watching this crap. And he understands, nobody's perfect, obviously. And, there's a couple of channels that I'm subscribed to that I should probably unsubscribe to as well because, again, wasting hours in a day watching this type of content is not going to do anybody a world of good. So, Yeah, I watched the video yesterday. It was like 40 minutes long. I watched it, but I can't recite or recall everything that was said in great detail in this video. So, but that's not the point. That's not why I'm making this video here today. The reason why I'm posting this video today is because during the CU podcast episode I watched yesterday, there was a part where Pat and Ian started talking about Brett Weiss. And, over the years, I've had mixed feelings with regards to Brett Weiss's content on YouTube. However, watching the CU podcast, they paint Brett in this sort of negative light, if you will, almost like a character assassination. And any unsuspecting viewer that's watching the CU podcast and hears this could get, the wrong impression with regards to who Brett Weiss is as a person. And the reason why I say wrong impression, we'll get to it in a minute, is because the thing is when you watch something like the CU podcast, it's all off the cuff, right? They're just rolling with it, with whatever comes out of their mouth, nothing scripted, which in a way is really good. That's how my channel is as well. How that can get you into trouble is when you don't take the time to think about what it is that you're going to say before the words come out of your mouth. Sometimes it can come back to bite you in the ass. So, again, Pat was going on and on about Brett Weiss. He was telling a story about how, Pat was coming out with his own NES, almost like an omnibus book, kind of like Brett Weiss. And he was under some sort of time crunch, so he was desperate and he reached out to Brett Weiss, and had asked for Brett Weiss to provide 60 game reviews for 60 NES games for his book. And in return, Pat would pay Brett a lump sum for those reviews. Now, Pat goes on to say that after he got those reviews, he took a closer look at them and he was under the impression that perhaps Brett didn't play or maybe beat all of the games that he had reviewed. Maybe these reviews were disingenuous. So Pat ended up using the reviews, is my understanding, for volume 1 of this book, or first pressing. And then he kept on using Brett Weiss's reviews even in the second pressing. And then in the third pressing, he took Brett Weiss's reviews out and replaced them with his own reviews. And he goes on to talk more about that, and there's some animosity between the two. And Pat goes on to talk about, how Brett Weiss has been saying sort of passive-aggressive remarks in his videos that were clearly directed towards Pat the NES Punk. And you watch this, and he goes on and on and on and on and on about Brett Weiss. On and on and on and on and on. You're watching it, you're like, okay. And the first thing I want to say is, why would you pay for a bunch of reviews before you even looked at them, okay? Do you go to the car dealership and buy a car without test driving it? What the fuck? And if you were so desperate, you're under time constraints, you had to just go out and grab 60 reviews without thinking twice just to be able to get your book completed. What does that say about you? Oh my God. When you said that, the first thing that goes off in my head is like, yeah, maybe I don't want to buy this guy's book. What the fuck else is going on with it? Oh my God. You know what I mean? You can't be bothered to write your own reviews. You have to, reach out to others. Which I guess, is fine, but like you didn't even look at the guy's reviews. You were just under, like, again, a time crunch, and you just grabbed whatever you could and went on your merry way. If I have that wrong, then I apologize. So, yeah, like I said, I watched the CU podcast. They put Brett Weiss, they sort of like painted him in a negative light. Didn't think anything of it. And then I came across a tweet from Brett Weiss today with a link to another, like a website. I think it's his actual website, if I'm not mistaken, where he sells his books. And Brett Weiss proceeds to explain his side of the story. Now, I read Brett Weiss' post, and there's a couple things I gotta say. The first thing is it's well worded, very calculated. If I didn't know better, I'd have to say perhaps Brett Weiss has been working on this post and he's been keeping it in his back pocket, waiting for the right time to release it. And so the problem with Pat the NES Punk, ripping into Brett Weiss is, shoot first, ask questions later. He just went off the cuff on Brett Weiss. Meanwhile, you got Brett Weiss over here, cool, calm, and collected. He sees that he's being, like I said, character assassination pretty much. He's being put on blast. And Brett Weiss doesn't, jump the gun and run to Twitter and freak out and put people on blast and put out a response video. He goes, fuck you, man, I didn't do that. Fuck you, no way, I didn't do that bullshit. What does he do? No, he goes back, takes a deep breath, takes a sip of his glass of water, sits down, and meticulously writes up a response. He writes it up. He's got the dates correct on the timing of events. Okay, he's not he's not putting Pat the NES Punk on blast in this article. He's absolutely professional in the way he's talking about the situation. And, to me, when I see that, that's professional. That's the way that you should be responding to someone who's putting you on blast, like I said, off the cuff, like that. And if anything, Brett Weiss, I look at him differently now. I've got more respect for him. If you want to read his response, I'll leave it in the video description below. But yeah, some of the things Brett Weiss started talking about, he was talking about how he was working on an omnibus book for the NES, and he feels around that time, this is when Pat the NES Punk started to act differently around Brett Weiss. They would go to gaming conventions, or they would go to the same gaming convention, and Brett Weiss would try to extend an olive branch and try to be courteous, polite, and Pat the NES Punk would give him the cold shoulder. Brett Weiss offered to do, I think, a panel with Pat, and Pat refused. And Brett even said it in his response article there that he did, his post. He was fine with that. He didn't take it personal. It was Pat's decision not to do, the panel, if you will. And Brett continued to act professional and polite anytime he was in the presence of Pat. He offered to, what did he say? Sign his book, or have him sign his book, and something he didn't want to do it. I don't know. But when you see Pat the NES Punk, the way he's acting on his podcast, extremely unprofessional. And then you see Brett Weiss take a step back and post a well-written response that lays everything out. It's extremely professional, okay? Not once did he attack Pat, and even at the end of Brett's response, he even leaves his email. He's like, listen, I have an open door policy. He's like, you can reach out to me. He's like, I've tried to reach out to you. You've blocked me on Twitter. So when Pat the NES Punk says in his CU podcast, he's talking about the big retro show. He's like, it's not a big world. If you want to find me, you know where to find me, and all the rest of it. Well, no, that's not true, because you blocked the big retro show on Twitter. You don't want to talk to him. You blocked Brett Weiss on Twitter, okay? So clearly, you can't handle confrontation, okay? I don't know if you're socially awkward. It seems that way from the few video clips I've seen of you at conventions. It seems like you're hesitant to talk to people. You've got your head down at your booth. Sometimes I question if you really do want to be there. It seems like you've taken on kind of a carny lifestyle where all you do is go to these conventions, convention to convention to convention. You and Metal Jesus Rocks and the rest of them. Hey, Brett Weiss goes to these conventions as well. Fine, whatever. But just remember, YouTube's not a full-time career, and Google is not your employer. I can't stress that enough, Pat. The longer you avoid getting a day job, the worse it's going to look when the day comes when you do have to go out and get a real job. And prospect employers are going to look at your resume and they're going to see a gap of employment. You're going to put on there, I've been a content creator for X and X and X and X and X amount of years. And then they're going to look up your fucking content on YouTube. And they're like, what the fuck? You'd be further ahead not to actually put that on your resume, to be honest. But we're getting off topic, okay? I digress. But yeah, I've gained a new appreciation for Brett Weiss to the point where I would never buy Pat the NES Punk's book. No fucking way. If I see Brett Weiss's book at the bookstore, I will buy it. I'll buy it. Fuck it. I'll buy it. And if I see Brett Weiss, maybe someday he comes to a convention in Canada, I'll walk up to him. I'll shake his hand. I'll get him to sign the book. I'll give him $10 to sign the book. I don't care. At this point, I've gained a whole new respect for Brett Weiss, not only as an author, a content creator, but just as a humble human being, someone who knows how to conduct themselves in a professional manner. He's obviously a class act. He could have handled this whole situation completely different. He was quiet for the longest time. It wasn't until this last CU podcast where he finally took the gloves off and he said, you know what, these guys are trying to fucking tarnish my good name, which they've been doing for a while. And he was smart to put out a post on his website in writing that was well thought out, and he didn't just rush to the camera or his iPhone and hit record and say whatever it was that came out of his mouth. So, yeah, I have nothing but respect for Brett Weiss. And Brett, if you're watching this, if you've seen some of my past videos where maybe I didn't paint you in the most positive light, I do apologize. And as far as Pat the NES Punk is concerned, him and his podcast, all they seem to talk about these days is Tommy Tallarico and the Amico. So they're kind of alienating a certain percentage of their audience that probably doesn't even know what the Amico is, or maybe they just don't care, which is, honestly, that's pretty fucking sad that you have to talk about the Amico, to sort of keep the ball rolling, keep the AdSense rolling. And isn't it ironic when you watch that latest episode how Ian is talking about how certain drama channels feed off each other and they bounce back between, one drama video here, then this person talks about this person and they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then they hug it out at the end. It's like, that's what you guys are doing. You're creating drama videos because all you're doing is talking about the Amico and other people as well. And there's a few, I don't really want to get into it, but there's some other things that were really fucking bizarre about that last video that they posted. Ian was saying something like, oh, a lot of you guys are going to die a lonely and miserable life alone, and no one's going to love you, and you're going to die miserable and alone. I got news for you, Ian, okay? You know what's worse than dying alone, lonely, without someone to love you? You know what's worse than that, Ian? Living with somebody that you can't fucking stand and staying together for the sake of children, okay? Or whatever the case may be. We've seen it time and time again, folks, okay? It's like the old saying, okay? The greatest cause of divorce is marriage, okay? Okay? Maybe some of us like to live the single life. Don't be fucking jealous, okay? Maybe some of us do want to die alone, okay? Fuck off. And then you're going on about Review Tech USA's podcast about how his co-host made a quib or a remark about a drawing of a red painted or a crayon colored hand on Pat's Christmas Amico video, and you're like, oh, that's a fucking child's drawing, you know? That's a child's drawing. How dare you? How dare you? You know you're living in 2023 when you can't make a joke on a video about a fucking drawing in the background of someone's video, and here you have a Karen running out there, you know, oh, that's a child's drawing. How dare you? Oh my God, the audacity. Just absolutely fucking ridiculous, these guys. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really want to post this video, but I had to because like I said, I had to speak up because I really think Brett Weiss did a really good job explaining his side of the story. Now that I understand the full picture, and I know there's two sides to every story, but seeing what I've seen watching the CU podcast and then reading what I read on Brett Weiss's webpage, I'm going to lead towards Brett Weiss giving a more accurate representation of what the true events were that led up to this sort of butting of heads between him and Pat the NES Punk. And like I said, Pat the NES Punk acts like he has an open door policy, and, you know, if people want to find him, they can, and all the rest of it. But he absolutely does not have an open door policy. I guarantee you, if I bumped into that guy somewhere on the street or maybe at a convention, he'd probably run away. He probably wouldn't even talk to me unless I give him $10. Let's be honest. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's much else to say. Oh yeah, and Ian said something, or they were talking about a comment from Master Welch, a guy that's been on my podcast, who had posted a comment about, like, at first glance, when you see it, it says something to the effect like, if Pat and Ian aren't careful with what they say, they may end up running into the wrong person in like a dark alley and something bad could happen. And I took that out of context as well when I first saw that. I'm like, what the fuck? Why would he say that? It's like an indirect threat. But then it was explained to me the way it was meant to be understood. And yes, Master Welch actually brings up a really good point. Something that's probably not talked about enough on YouTube. But like, you kind of do have to be careful, at least if you're a bigger channel, I would say. You kind of have to be careful with what you say, or you don't. But it is very possible there's a lot of unhinged people in this world, okay, that could track you down, okay, and try to do something that's really fucked up. It's true. I hate to say that. I hate to think that. But it's true. It's true. He's not wrong, okay? He doesn't want that to happen. He's just bringing up, like a realistic possibility for any of us, right? If I lip off to Pat the NES Punk, who's to say he doesn't track me down? You don't know. You don't know. It's the risk you take, being on this platform, especially when you're calling people out. And hey, yeah, that's all I got for this video. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. But if you want to know more about the whole situation, or at least Brett Weiss's side of things, go check it out. Like I said, I can't recite Brett Weiss's whole post here. I just wanted to sort of touch base. And yeah, I think he handled it like a man. And he has made attempts to talk to Pat the NES Punk. It's Pat who has closed the door on communication, okay? He's the one that doesn't want to communicate with anybody. Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm going to cut it off there right at the 24-minute mark. But anyways, if you guys have any thoughts on this, leave it in the comments below. I'm sure once Pat sees this, he'll probably block me on Twitter and or feature me in his next CU podcast. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.